Hey, welcome to ACF Podcast, where men share their incredible stories of God's grace and His relentless pursuit of our hearts. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified every time we upload a new podcast. We hope that you enjoy this story, and God bless.
All right. Well, welcome ACF, Ashland Christian Fellowship. We are actually here. I'm Garrett Flynn. I've been going here to ACF for 15 years. And Josh, how long have you been coming here to ACF?
About the same, about 15 years.
15 years.
15 years.
So Josh and I actually both serve on the elder board. And today we're kind of just sticking with our testimony series that we're doing. Our goal and hope is that everybody in the church is inspired to share their testimony, no matter how crazy or boring you think it is. So, Josh, yeah.
I'll lead off with the boring part.
Right. Go with the boring. Boring's, you know what? Pastor Mark told me a long time ago. He said, thank God for boring.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's start. Where you born and raised here in Ashland?
Born and raised here in Ashland.
Nice.
Yep, born in Ashland Hospital. First 5-6 years of my life, we actually lived at the funeral home. My grandpa owned it. My dad worked there.
That's not weird at all.
I don't remember a lot of it, because, first 5 years, how much do you really remember?
Right.
I remember pieces. Never being weird, though. It was just, it was normal for us.
Just a few dead bodies.
Yeah, I didn't see too many that I remember.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I think they kept us pretty well separated from that part of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, this is going to be a redundancy for me because you and I are together all the time. So,
Yep.
But I think it's great, and I love hearing your story because it always inspires me as well and encourages me that God's never done. So,
Never.
So you grew up here in Ashland,
Did.
funeral home.
Till about first grade. Then we moved up right across the street from the hospital,
Okay.
emergency room. My dad bought the ambulance service from my grandpa and ran that until I was 18-ish, right towards my senior year in high school.
Yeah.
So I lived in that house until then, went to Ashland High School,
Just you and your brother Jake,
just me and my brother Jake.
and then so family. I know your parents got divorced.
They did.
How old were you when that happened?
I don't know the exact age, but I was right around fifth grade, I believe, fifth, sixth grade, right in that area when they split up. And I can't remember exactly when the divorce was final, but right around that time.
So did you see some of the divide early on in the marriage?
Yeah, there was some fighting and stuff. My dad worked a ton with the ambulance service. Like, he was on call 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So there was days when I wouldn't see him at all.
Sure.
He'd be gone all day, all night, and then some days he'd be there all day.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a hit or miss situation
So
with him being around.
pretty safe to say your dad was workaholic.
Yeah, he worked all the time.
And mom, what did she do for work?
She worked for the ambulance service too, but she worked at the house. So the office was at the house, so she'd answer calls and do billing and
Okay.
stuff like that. So she was around the house all the time.
So mom and dad part ways.
Yep.
How does that work with you and Jake? How does that
It was tough for sure.
Yeah.
Again, I don't remember exactly how it felt. Pretty, I think that part of my life I kind of put behind me and forgot about. But I think at that point I started to think I could get away with a lot more than I probably should have.
Sure.
Dad's gone, disciplinarian's out of the house. So yeah, I started to get into trouble pretty early, pretty early, pretty soon after he left.
And so you were living with mom.
Living with mom, still at the same house across from the hospital.
Okay.
Dad moved into an apartment not too far from the house for a while, and then ended up on top of the Green Springs.
So were either one of them going to church when you guys were younger?
Not a lot. Not that I remember. No.
Okay.
No, and so, like, where I would take off and go to get away would be my aunt and uncle's house, and they actually just lived right up the street on Oak Street here. And so then my uncle would bring us down here to church.
To
Come to
ACF?
church. Yeah, to ACF.
Really?
Yeah, so I remember going when it was in the Derek's building
Okay.
across the street.
So some of the old the older gray tops here at our church would know what the Derrick's building is, and I've heard about it enough times. But you were part of that. You actually were there when you were a kid.
Off and on.
Sure.
It was pretty sporadic.
Yeah.
Pretty sporadic. And then we would go with my grandparents a lot too, but they went to Christian Center over on Garfield Street.
Okay.
So we were kind of both directions.
So there was a faith base in the family,
For
just
sure.
maybe not direct
For
with
sure.
mom and dad, but
Yeah.
like grandma and grandpa, aunt and uncle.
Yeah.
Now, grandma and grandpa, aunt and uncle, were they pretty solid believers?
My uncle was. My aunt was not.
Oh,
She wouldn't go. She never went, I don't remember her going to church much at all growing up. But my uncle would go all the time. Hardworking dude, super hardworking guy.
yeah.
Worked for the garbage company. So he'd work 10, 12 hours, come home, shower up, and then would take us to go play pool at Good Times or go play softball or. Yeah.
Awesome.
So he was, he kind of stepped up.
So is this your dad's brother or is this your mom's
No,
brother?
so it's my mom's sister's husband.
Oh, okay.
Actually.
So like not even like,
Not even like a blood
okay.
uncle, but like was, he always called me and my brother his boys.
Oh,
So he just had one girl.
sure.
And so we were his boys. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Dude, what a
Yeah.
blessing.
Yeah, oh for sure. Solid guy, hardworking.
So you're going to church, favorite uncle, grandma and grandpa, and parents are divorced, a little bit of a struggle there. You're kind of dabbling in and out of the world and having fun
Yeah.
as a kid because there's really no solid concrete like direction, right?
Yeah.
And so high school,
Well, I actually started getting into trouble in middle school. I don't
Oh.
know how much I want to, reveal.
we don't need to talk about it.
But actually, yeah. So I remember sixth grade I was pretty good.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of friends. I was pretty quiet. But then like seventh grade is when I started with, experiment with stuff I probably shouldn't have been,
Yeah.
especially at that age, super young. Getting in trouble in class, getting in-school suspension. I remember spending quite a few days like doing my whole school day in the office.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
I'd take my lunch and that was it. Like in the office until 3:30 and then out.
And so was there any kind of consequence when you came home? Did mom and dad ever, was there any form of like real
Yeah, my
discipline
mom would
or,
ground
like-
me,
Okay.
and keep me around the house. But I think it got to a point where I was just such a pain that she would almost want me not at the house. You know,
Yeah.
I would just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I get that.
So I mean,
So then high school comes, right? And
Yeah.
you probably found some more rowdy friends to hang out with. And
oh yeah. The
Yeah.
pool just got bigger, right? I mean, middle school's a little bit more sheltered, I guess I would say.
yeah.
You get to high school and it's a lot of freedom, open campus, off for lunch, take off with friends that were older. I ended up running around with a bunch of kids that were older than me. So we'd go to lunch and it wasn't always food that we would,
Sure.
take in and then go back to class, which my freshman year was rough. It was really rough. I'm not sure how many classes I failed, but I know it was more than I passed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it made the rest of high school tough. Like I was playing catch up the whole rest of the time,
Yeah.
taking night classes and stuff like that just to get through.
So looking back on it now, like in the season that you're in now, was it a lash out because of what had happened growing up and maybe the chaos that was like maybe the fighting you seen between mom and dad and now mom and dad's divorce, or was it like, man, this is my chance to kind of like, have my fun and do it while nobody's caring?
I think that was it. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think I was really lashing out. Like I don't remember holding a lot of resentment towards my parents for divorce or anything like that, because I mean, it's not abnormal. It wasn't,
yeah.
It didn't seem like it to me.
Yeah.
Most of my parents, their friends, most of my friends' parents were divorced at that age. So it wasn't something weird.
If you come think about it, I had a lot of friends that their parents were all divorced too growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was more like, hey, I get to have my fun now, take off, do whatever I want. And then, like I said, my mom would try and discipline me, but then I would just be like, yeah, okay. And then just leave.
And how was your brother during this time? Was he like
He went the total opposite. He's super introverted.
Okay.
Like real quiet, tons of video games. Like,
Yeah.
him and his friends would just hole up in the house all weekend and play video games.
So you heard a lot like, why can't you be like your brother, right? It was like,
Kinda. I mean, it depended on who it was.
Yeah.
My dad wasn't a fan of that. He didn't like the fact that my brother was constantly just in the house,
sure.
and not going out doing stuff. Had, a small group of friends, like 2.
So then I know you've been married as long as I have. So it's like,
Yeah.
so you meet your wife, right? And you
Yeah,
guys, you guys met in
high school. Yeah.
Why don't you walk through
class.
that?
Yeah, it's math class.
And that's the reason why she keeps score when we play dice.
Yeah, no, I think she might have failed that class.
Oh,
Just
great.
kidding. No, I'm kidding. Joking. I'm not sure how she did. Yeah, but it was weird because the aunt and uncle that I'd spent tons of time with, my cousin from that marriage, was friends with my wife all the way through like elementary school. So I'd met her like in passing. We didn't hang out a lot.
Right.
We weren't friends, but we kind of knew of each other. And then math class, we ended up sitting right across from each other, and that was it. Like we started talking, and then that summer ended up going to a party and sitting around with some of her friends and talking, and they were like, "Oh yeah, Annie likes you. She asked, she talks about you." And then that was it. So got a hold of her, and we started hanging out and dating.
And this was all pre-beard, right? So like this
Pre-beard.
is like, yeah. So
Pre-beard.
she fell in love with you pre-beard.
Yeah.
How does she feel about the beard now?
She loves it. No, yeah, she wishes it was trimmed up, a
Yeah.
little more well kept. But that's, part of the reason I let it go, kind of to annoy her a little bit.
Nice.
Maybe.
So you guys, you guys obviously graduate high school, and then you guys get married, and
So we waited a while to get married.
okay,
We got married because we started dating in '94, and then we didn't get married till 2000, obviously. So we were living together and everything, definitely going about things the wrong way.
sure,
A lot of partying going on then, a lot of bad decisions.
and no church at that time. Neither one of you were going to church.
Like on the special occasions, Easter, or
Sure.
like when I'd want to make my grandparents happy, I'd show up, things
Right,
like that. But
right.
yeah, it was definitely the furthest thing from my mind, showing up to church. And I can't, and I don't remember like saying, like, "Oh, I'm not going there." It just, I don't know, it just never happened. It was not,
Right.
not even a thought.
So then, when did you feel like I need to get back in church? When was that? When did that happen?
Well, after we had Shelby, so she was born in 2004, and after a while, still doing the partying thing,
Right.
and just, I finally got to a point where I'm like, man, I don't want my kids seeing me like this. This is not the sort of upbringing I want for her. And then I just told my wife, I'm like, hey, we're going to go to church. And then we did. And I think it was like after the first time, we were just like hooked. We just started coming back.
Awesome.
Yeah, came to this church here.
And so then you came back,
Mm-hmm.
and so then what happened? When did the part of you goes like, okay, it's bigger than what I thought?
Well, for a while, it was just showing up,
Sure.
and just coming, sitting in the back.
Right.
Not my choice, of course.
Annie knows the spots. She knows
The spot.
back of the bus, back of the church.
Yeah,
like,
for sure. But you know her, right? Super introverted. And I was pretty quiet at that time, too. I didn't like talking to a bunch of strangers. So we'd sit in the back, like, message was done, up, out the door, as soon as we could. But after a while, you start to realize, like, hey, there's something more. Like, I'm here for a reason, and I really felt, I used to love coming to Wednesday nights. And it was back when they would do the Bible study, and then they would turn the lights down and do worship for like 20 minutes, communion. And it was, I can't remember like the exact date or anything like that, but there was one night on a Wednesday night where like he grabbed me, where Jesus just got a hold of me that night and said, you're meant for more than this.
Yeah.
You're not here just so Shelby can go to Sunday school or Awanas,
right.
And
So God says, I'm going to make you a fisher of men at that point? Or he says, hey, look, I want you to stop being a pew writer. And I need you to.
Yeah, like
Okay.
he got a hold of me and let me know what real salvation was.
Awesome.
Not just showing up to church and, singing the songs and all that. Like,
Yeah. So real
Sorry, yeah.
salvation. How does that explain it?
Well, like on my knees crying, saying, I'm worthless, the way I am.
Yeah.
I've sinned so much. And, it was tough. It was a tough night, but amazing at the same time.
That's awesome.
Just crying out, asking for forgiveness for stuff I knew that I was still hanging on to.
Yeah. So then you come to this moment, you say, God, I'm done doing me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surrendering it all to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how far after that before you start asking, or did somebody come up and ask you, hey, would you be willing to help out? Or
I don't remember exactly how that happened, but I lived like 2 houses up from Jim Figgith.
awesome dude.
Yeah. And
love that guy.
Super good dude. And so I think we ended up at his house. I'd go to their TLC. And I think he just grabbed me like, hey, why aren't you ushering, and stuff like that. Why aren't you helping out in the gym? So it started there.
Figgith is a great recruiter. If you guys we don't have guys like that now at our church, but Figgith was just one of those kind of guys that he'd ask you why aren't you being part of this? And he's such a good dude, and I'm glad he's still at our church and still plugged in. But so he asked you, why aren't you ushering or doing something? And then what happens?
So then I did it,
And at that time, we were probably doing 2 services Sunday morning.
I think so, yeah.
So would you serve one and then listen on another? Is that the way you would do it typically?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Not when I was doing the gym, though. I think when I started doing gym security, there was only 1 service. So it was but it was just once a month. So it was 1 service out of the month that I could miss. And I'd still go, and that when we were still doing Wednesday nights then.
And that's when you and I met, is when you were doing gym security.
Yeah.
And it was the coolest thing. I think I even skipped out on church that day.
Yeah, I think you just came by, and I don't know how we started talking, but it was the whole service. We just sat and talked.
And I'm super introverted, so it was very uncomfortable for me to talk to him.
I had to do all the talking, if I remember right. I
Yeah.
don't think you said much of anything.
No, I didn't. So you and I are hanging out, and this is the one part that I feel like I can be a little bit part of the story, was that Katrina and I were talking about possibly starting a TLC, and we were just mildly talking about it. And then I don't know if were you talking about with Annie at the time?
I don't know. We never really talked about starting one, but definitely getting involved.
Getting plugged in somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. I was talking about it. She was talking about it, but not in a positive way, I guess.
Sure.
You know how she is. She's super introverted.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to get in trouble for that.
God's going to, what's great though, we say this all the time, God's going to use that. She's got incredible skills.
Yeah.
Right. And God's going to use those skills for his glory and not hers. And we're going to be there at the moment when that clicks.
For sure.
She's already done it. She's a baby whisperer. She helps out with the Awanas and the kids and stuff. They all love her. Everybody loves Annie. So.
Well, the kids do.
Yeah. So anyhow, I think it was Joe Moser comes up and says, hey, if I started TLC, would you guys come?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was the same Sunday. Was it the same exact Sunday when he did all that for all of us, or?
I don't know. I'm not sure when he talked to you. Yeah, but I know he talked to a few of us that Sunday.
Yeah.
But that was God's timing for sure. Because
was.
we were all talking about it anyway, and it just then, Big Joe shows up. I'm like, hey, what do you think?
And so we had 5. Was it 5 or 6? It must have been 5 or 6 really core group in our TLC when it started. And so you were serving as gym security at the time. You would usher and fill in from time to time when Jim needed you.
Yeah.
And the Shanks at the time were the commanders of Awana, and they came up to you, and what did Derek
just said they needed help, hey, how do you feel about helping out on a Wednesday night?
And they were part of our church family, so you're
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah. And that seemed like an easy step to take. You go from ushering and gym security to helping out with kids. It's not like a big leap. For me, it wasn't.
And kids are super forgiving. So you could come and talk to them and most time just listen because they're hilarious.
Oh, they're super funny.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
So you do that for how long?
Deal. I think we did it for 3 years. You were helping out too at that time, right? Then you joined in, and we did. Remember doing 3rd and 4th grade together. Yeah. With you. It was a harder sell for my wife again, know, because I don't know how well we knew, the Shanks and stuff at that point. You know what I mean? We were all still kind of fresh in the TLC.
Yeah, but it had been growing. What was great was like during that time, we had so much from our home group. You know, we had Jim Vermillion, who was going through cancer, and we had the Shanks that were going through some court stuff and some other things that were going on. We had the Barrows, like the Barrows had showed up later on, and they were going through their stuff. And I was running my business at the time, and you'd still been working for Maranatha, and but yeah, all of us, I think, had stuff that was going on that really, I think, helped like cement all the families together.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's so much easier, I think, when you're walking with other people. They don't necessarily have to even be in the same season, because Jim was like the older, wiser dude out of all of us, which you always need. You know, like they say that like you have to have, if you're going to have a Timothy, you have to have a Paul as well, right? You have to have somebody who's older and wiser than you can kind of give that to us. And I think we got to see so many great things come out of that TLC.
Oh yeah.
So the Shanks move.
Yep.
And our church is in need of a Awana commander. I have to smile at this because this was such a stretching moment for you.
It was. Yeah. I mean, because it was the time, like, again, serving with kids and helping out, listening to verses, playing some games, that's one thing. But then, like, when they're like, hey, we need somebody to step up.
Yeah.
For me and my wife, you know, it was super, super trying, super stretching and putting us out there. But we went for it, right? Prayed about it a ton, and God was just like, yep, leading us that way. So we did it. And then...
And for the record, I'm going to have to say this because I know Annie said that she's the one that made the call on it because you were less persuaded than her, and she was the one that was saying like, nope, it was me that said
it kind of was, because if you know me, like I'm pretty what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I like things super organized and like you know how I am, right?
Oh, Awana's chaos.
It is pure chaos, and like that scared me a little bit.
Which your wife she thrives in chaos.
She is chaos.
She does really
chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, calm on the outside, but
super
chaos.
Yeah.
You know, going on around her.
Oh, yeah.
Which she grew up in.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
That was her. You know, that was.
Hopefully,
her household.
Annie gives her testimony at some time. If not, some of you gals in the church start pulling on her ear a little bit.
Oh yeah, just go up and grab her and start talking to her and hug on her.
So anyhow, you guys become the Awana commanders.
We do.
And what's that like for you now? How's your walk with the Lord now? Like, what is it? What's the overall build up to this point now? Because you went from just like the guy like, okay, we need to get back in church, and now I have a daughter.
Yeah.
To pew riding, to a TLC with Jim Figgith, to now I'm going to be gym security, to now I'm going to be, a Awana leader.
Yeah.
And then now you're the Awana commander.
And that whole thing was super eye-opening, like letting go of the control I thought I had is what it did for me. Like I said, like showing up to that place thinking, okay, this is how each night's going to go. And, the schedule's going to work out this way. And that all goes away.
Right.
As soon as you get into there. Anybody who works with the kids can tell you that. Definitely had some guidance from an older volunteer one night, and he could tell that I was struggling a little bit, and he's like, just embrace the chaos, and enjoy it, and so
he does that well.
He does,
yeah,
he does. We should all strive to live like that guy. Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah.
But it took a lot of praying, a lot of like, all right, God, like help me to let go of this, control that I thought I had.
Yeah.
And I think it happened more in my life too, not just on Wednesday nights. I think that's where I realized, like, if I let go of control and let God run things, like, then I'm pretty capable of,
And do you think that's been
do anything?
Do you think that's been like probably one of your biggest speed bumps? Is just the overwhelming desire to control environments and control situations? And So I think I just want to clarify that, because I think that there's a lot of people that could understand that their own comfort level, their own comfort and environment to control the pieces and micromanage those pieces. God's going to take you to the place where he's going to say, hey, look, I need you to let go of all this.
For sure.
And you feel like that's kind of what God's been bringing you through?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
But is it still something that hiccups that you're...
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's still those moments, like my wife and I laugh about it because I just, talked to her not too long ago about this, but like, even on a Saturday when we have nothing really planned,
Yeah.
like I wake up with a schedule in my head. Like, okay, I got to get up and I have this long to do this. And then we should be doing this by this time and this, and
So I have to ask.
and my wife and
Oh, yeah.
Shelby, so the schedule is,
Zero schedule.
Yeah.
If they can get up at noon, go like eat, and then go right back to bed, they'd be down for it.
oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
who in your family, was it your mom or your dad that was like super into the order?
It's my dad.
Your dad.
Yeah. Yeah, he's pretty scheduled type guy. But he would also be pretty spontaneous a lot of times too.
Yeah.
I remember, staying up at his house and he had his pilot's license. So we'd wake up on like a Saturday and he'd have his maps out and he's like, all right, we're going to go to, go fly down to Napa and go to, what was the water park down there in Napa. Anyway,
Oh. Yeah. Raging Water.
Yeah, something down there. But and that would be it. He would just wake up and then we'd just take off and fly down there and come back. So he had his moments like that for sure.
Sure.
But I think what I saw of him was his work, and how well regimented that was.
So what do you think that's one of the things though that God's been really saying, hey, look, I need you to continue to let this go, and I'll give you freedom from that if you just let it go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Awana Commander, now Awanas have shifted it's Team Kid, right?
Team Kid, yeah.
Team Kid. And then, so you guys are still doing that, like.
Well, I mean, we were
before COVID.
Before COVID, yeah.
So, what other areas has God kind of pulled you into? Because I remember for me personally, like being like God just telling me that, hey, look, I was very frustrated at that time. I was sharing with you that I was very frustrated with the homeless and struggling with that whole thing. And I'd say, like, I just don't know what I'm supposed to do about this or how I'm supposed to handle it. And then I'd say, like, I think I'm supposed to go out in the Greenway and pick up trash. And you were like that guy that just was like, when we going?
Yeah.
And maybe that's like, like that.
Well, I think I set the date, dude.
You did. You were like,
again,
you
there's
called me
the
up.
control part,
It
right?
was.
Like, I don't know. Sometimes it's good.
So we've talked, obviously, hours and hours and hours, and we've walked the Greenway miles and miles and miles, and we've talked to so many people and heard the stories. What is God like? What are some, like, maybe share one story that you felt like, because this is like local ministry, like grassroots, like bare bones. You're out on the Greenway dealing with people that have mental health issues, addiction issues. What most people will kind of label the scum of the earth, but the reality is, like, as we've figured out, they're just broken people, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So any stories though that, like, you feel like God, like, kind of just said, hey, you need to pay attention to this one?
Well, I think the guy that first night we were out there, and we were walking.
Absolutely.
After we talked to those three people and we were walking, and that guy comes towards us, and we hear him talking.
Yeah.
He's a ways off. Remember, he was like quoting scripture and
Totally.
just like, oh, you're preaching preaching Yahweh, way to go, guy. And like, that was super eye opening.
It was.
That this guy, he knew scripture better than me.
Yeah.
And was just rattling it off, but he's still on the street.
Yeah.
And that was super eye opening for me, because he loved his sin so much. Remember, that's what he said.
Oh man, he was
like, this is why I'm here. And he's like, but I love it.
Dude, you and I both said that night. We were like, we feel like God's going to do way more in our lives than we're ever going to be able to imprint on anybody else's life.
Yeah.
And that was something I feel like, I think you were like, you even said you're like, would you be willing to say it the same way about your own sin? Would you be willing to just smile and close your eyes and go, I know it's wrong, but I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
because we never look at it that way, do we?
No.
Well, I was never taught that way. Sin was something you hated.
Yeah.
It's horrible, but like, for that guy to embrace it and say, this is why I'm here. Mm-hmm. He hadn't dealt with it yet, of course, but I think just to admit that is eye-opening to me, to say, like,
yeah,
that's why it's got such a grip on people, because sin's super easy to love.
Yeah. I mean, Paul said, he's like, I do the very thing I don't want to do.
Yeah.
And I don't do the thing that I really want to do. And I feel like we heard a Paul moment that night, you know, like, and we try to keep track of that guy, and we'd ask people, we'd go to the gospel mission and head down there and be part of that ministry as well.
Yep.
And I feel like it was one of those things that I remember the day after and sitting down at my desk in the office and having that same conversation in my head that you and I had and going like, am I willing to say that I love my sin?
Mm-hmm.
Because I keep stumbling in it, right?
For sure.
And we still struggle with that thing. But I feel like when you actually are honest, super honest with yourself, like that guy was, like it's especially when it's something that you're trying to be free from. It's so great to finally just say, you know what, I know exactly what this is. I love my sin.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I feel like I'm putting more pleasure in the lie than I am the truth. And you know, we've had a lot of great eye-opening nights out there on the Greenway.
Every night we go down there.
Oh yeah, and we've encouraged so many people, like, hey, look, you guys should come down and check it out.
Yeah. Even if we don't get to like preach the gospel, like, well, Ian, remember Ian?
Oh yeah,
Just listening to him and that was
bizarre.
Yeah, but you couldn't get a word in edgewise.
No.
That guy was just 100 miles an hour.
No, and just to give you a little background on Ian, he was trying to start a fire. It was actually the night that somebody tried to sell Josh meth. It was awesome.
There was same night.
But Ian was this guy that I was like, so hey, how long you been homeless? And he was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is my home.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I mean, like, how long you've been living outside then? He's like, well, there's an ozone layer, so I'm actually inside. And I was like,
that was tough. It was that way for like 15 minutes.
Oh man, it was so like I was mentally just drained at that point.
It was tough, yeah.
So he was up for the challenge, and he drained. Like, I was completely exhausted by the time I walked away from the conversation.
Yeah.
But we prayed for him.
Prayed for him, and yep, it was good.
Yeah. So you're this kid that grew up in a house that wasn't really following the Lord, and you basically had these folks that separated, right?
Yep.
You have a dad who's a workaholic. You have a mom that had probably her own issues, right? And an uncle that loved you like you're his own kid.
Oh yeah,
which is just awesome.
Still to this day, they're divorced now, and I still see them. And
that's awesome.
You know,
not that they're divorced, but that he still loves you.
But yeah,
yeah.
You know, he still talks about us being his boys and starts crying, and I mean,
so little by little, like, it wasn't like this instant conversion. It's done and over with. Like it was a frog in a pot, right? Like
for sure.
The slow boil.
Yep.
Until finally God says, okay, you're ready. I need you to do something.
And I mean, I'd heard the gospel since I was young, so I knew, and I believed in Jesus. I believed he was real and what he did would happen, but like, I didn't have that relationship
right
until that Wednesday night, when I finally said, like, man, I really need you. I need, your blood for some of my salvation.
Yeah.
But yeah, it took a while.
Yeah. And now, so then you get asked to serve on the board. And what was the process in that? Because I know how that was for me. Go for it.
As far as
being asked for that placement.
Yeah.
That is a big.
It was big. Yeah. It felt heavy. Like a little bit of fear right away.
Oh yeah.
You're like, oh man, am I up to the challenge, up to it? And again, though, I think just doing the Awana thing and letting go and letting God take control and doing that, and like doing the Greenway same way, right?
Yeah.
Like before we go out, we pray and say, hey, you're in control. Just use us. Same with the being asked to be on the elder board. Like, all right, it's not me.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm just going to let God work through me. Otherwise, I'd freak out. Yeah, it'd be scary.
And this releasing of your own control, this relaxing of, okay, hey, look, I'm, you could easily stay home on a Tuesday night instead of going out on the Greenway and going to these smelly homeless camps.
For sure.
And getting cussed at and yelled at. There was even a guy that was pulling out knives one night. He's a funny dude. He ended up being a really great guy, by the way.
Yeah.
But we had to stick out the conversation, right? We had to
Yeah.
find out more
Yeah.
about him, and he had an incredible story. But your heart has never changed. I've been around you enough, and it's always like, I just really wish this guy would know Jesus, right?
For sure.
And for some of the people that are in our church that haven't, they've been pew riding maybe for too long. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe the legs
Yeah.
are numb. Maybe the butt's a little numb right now. But
Yeah.
what would you encourage? I think the people in our church, because of like, I guess you're just this.
Well, that's it. Just start somewhere. Start
Yeah.
small, I think, is the easiest way to do it. You know, that's how I did it.
Yeah.
Just start serving wherever you're comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you got to stretch yourself some, but I think for most people, even just ushering is a stretch, or doing gym security.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just getting up and serving people.
And what's great is you don't always have to do it in our church.
No, not at all.
You know, like we started that Greenway ministry, just going out together doing that.
Yeah.
And sure, there was always a little bit of selfishness saying, hey, look, we want to hang out and spend some more time
Well,
together.
for sure.
But the reality is that like we were excited just to see who we were going to meet that night, what divine appointment God was going to set up. So I would you agree by just even telling the people in the church, is like, it could just be a neighbor, just being able to say, hey, look, you know, I wouldn't mind spending some time with you. I just wouldn't mind hearing your story.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
I think everybody can truly be a good listener. You know, like we've said this so many times. It's like Christ himself said so many times that those have eyes, let them see. Those have ears, let them hear. If people saw the very thing that God dropped the scales on your eyes to be able to see, and I'm always blessed by it, honestly. I'm blessed every single time I get to spend time with you and hang out with you, because you're a guy that like I definitely encourages me. But hearing that story even again, right? And even in just the depth that you gave everybody now, is still that story of you just showing up.
Yeah.
And
that's
little
it.
by little saying, hey, look, I'm wanting to kind of see what's around the next corner, right?
Yeah.
I want to see what's
Yeah.
available next to
Well,
me.
and that's it. You know, that's Mark's words always ring in my head. You know, the best ability is availability,
Oh, yeah.
right?
I think that's great.
Because again, I think, you know, I always thought like control and order was my best quality, but God's not using that part of me, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm just using the part of me I never thought I would use.
And if people knew, like, I've been in your warehouse before and I've seen it, and it's if I was gonna have an operation, I would let the doctors do it in your warehouse, because everything was like perfectly straight. The floor was shiny, everything.
Yeah,
So you use those gifts that God gave you
for sure.
for worldly things, right? Things
Yeah.
that like, but then do you think the reality has kind of come now that saying like the job is just to kind of grease the wheel?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think your
Yeah.
sole purpose is now in this life? Like now that you've been through halfway through it, what do you like? What's the ultimate purpose of Josh?
Just reaching more people with the gospel, hitting
Yeah.
the Greenway more. You know, I really have a heart for that. I mean, you know that, the gospel mission,
Yeah.
Greenway. You know, Shelby's 16 now, and so just continuing raising her up in the you know, in the Lord, and
Oh yeah.
making sure that she's walking.
And she
with
serves,
him,
and she serves
she's
on
serving.
Sunday school. It's so awesome to see
Yeah.
the kind of woman that she's grown up to be. And
Yeah, and to keep stretching my wife's comfort
Yeah.
zone, you know, and just. I don't think I'm still not the spiritual leader at home that I want to be. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
better than I was for sure, but I'm not where I want to be.
what would be some things that you would want to change or do better, even at home? Just
better
say put
better
your own-
prayer with my wife and my daughter for
Yeah.
sure. You know, that's a huge one. Studying more with them.
Sure.
You know, it's easy to study with yourself, you know, by yourself, but
Yeah.
to get them to like, hey, come here, you know, let's.
That's a tough one.
It is tough.
It's tough for dads. We hear about it all the time. You and I have talked to so many dads that just have not stepped up to be the spiritual leader in their home, and how important that is for stability, for security, for wives to be
yeah.
at peace and knowing that their husband's being called to the man that God's called them to be and do. And so, you know, I guess what would you encourage others in our church then to start at least asking themselves the question, like what would be the question that you would want them to start asking themselves?
Well, like you did with us in the kitchen that night, you know, what are 3 things that you want to change
Oh yeah.
right now?
Yeah.
You know, and do it with your family. Because when you did that and we were all in there,
That was so crazy.
And like the things that we said, like in front of my wife and then just to see their faces,
Yeah.
you know, to hear the honesty from us and from me.
It was cool.
You
I
know?
mean, it made your wife even open up and say, "Hey, look, there's some things I want to
Oh,
change
for sure.
as well."
And Shelby,
Yeah.
you know, when I said I wanted to, you know, have better communication with her, a better relationship with her.
Yeah.
And I feel like we have a pretty good relationship now.
You guys
but,
do.
But it can always be better.
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know. So yeah, that's where I think I would start. And with prayer, of course, you know, with the fam.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
what's next? We're in COVID now.
Well, that's the thing about, you know, I became an elder and then it was like, I think I went to one meeting and then it was lockdown after that.
Yeah.
So I think the very first meeting, we actually were discussing COVID. And
Oh, yeah.
like the impact it was going to have. And then it had a huge impact for a couple months.
Yep.
But I'm finding I really do like just serving people,
Yeah.
whether it's serving communion or, you know,
Yeah.
Wednesday nights with the kids or going out on the greenway and, you know, just having more of a servant's heart, you know. I never thought I'd be that way.
See, I don't think your testimony is boring at all.
I think it's pretty boring.
I know.
It's pretty standard.
And you know, I probably I would say that there's probably going to be a lot of people that are going to follow the same suit, but I think that there's going to be a lot of people that even in our church that are listening that would take the time to go like, okay, I grew up maybe in a similar environment, or maybe I didn't grow up, my parents are still married, right? Like,
Yeah.
and you know, like, but maybe they grew up in the church and they seen some hypocrisy at home. They seen those kind of things. They still have to walk through the things that they carried before, just like you. Like,
Sure.
I mean, you seen certain qualities in your dad that were good. His organization was good. The little bit of spontaneous was good. That kind of stuff was good. But there was obviously some selfish tendencies, things that I think is, we don't need our parents to learn these things because I think that we learn them well enough on our own.
Oh, yeah.
But in your case, you know, to have this walk, you can kind of see it in a movie kind of theme, right? Like you're walking along and little by little, God's just kind of guiding you in this
Yeah,
direction. And the
yeah.
more you say, okay, Lord, what's next? I think you and I have talked about this enough that we've often asked ourselves, like, you know, like, why God is this happening to me? To, you know, God, just slow this down. Could you just make it a little bit easier? Like, it doesn't have to be so, okay, God, I'm listening,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I love hearing the part that you get to the part where you're like, okay, God, I'm listening,
For sure.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think that you're a wise dude. I learned
know about that.
I learned from the things that you do well, and it's made me a better dad and it's made me a better husband. And honestly, I've learned from your shortfallings.
Yeah.
And I feel like
the same way with you.
oh yeah, and
For sure, we've both done that.
and I think that if we're willing to be honest about that, and there's no reason why that other people in our church can't look at a guy like you and says, you know, this is the guy who's like church famous, right? He's been doing like the announcements.
Don't bring it up. Don't. That name's finally dying. It's finally going away. We don't need to.
He's church famous, right? Like people know Josh, right? But it's like they don't know exactly how much you've been involved in.
Yeah.
And I can truly say, from a guy who's watched you from the very beginning, from being gym security to running a crazy night with 60 kids running around, you know, to being out on the greenway and praying with people, that was not a strength of yours.
No,
I got to see
not at
God
all.
stretch you,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
going to the gospel mission and praying with guys there. I just feel like, you know, I'm excited to see what's just around the corner next.
Yeah, so am I now at this point. You know, it's just now. I feel like, again, we turn it all over to him and just see what he's going to do.
Amen.
Just show up,
Yeah.
you know.
Anything else that you want to share?
No, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much me.
I think it's a silver bullet, and I feel like I'm always blessed to hang out with you. I'm always blessed to be part of this church and God's ultimate goal, and I feel like you shared that well tonight. Just taking that step forward, even if it's a baby step. You don't necessarily have to be serving in church. You don't have to be the guy who's
No.
holding communion plate, but maybe you could be the person that just, you know,
Like you say, talks to the neighbor,
absolutely, and just start there.
do something kind, you know, do something for them.
Well, we appreciate everybody listening, and you get half a chance to pray for this guy. You know, he still has things that he wants to do better even at home and his ministry that God has for him. Continue to pray for our church, and we pray that you guys are staying safe, and thanks.